This November, the state of Oregon will be arguing a case before the Supreme Court for the first time in over a decade. The case coming before the justices, many of President Trump's tariffs and whether they are within his authority to impose. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, who is leading the case against the administration, argues no, saying the tariffs are unlawful. For more on the case as it heads to the Supreme Court, we are joined now by Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Steve.
The Supreme Court has granted requests from both sides for an expedited review here. What does this mean for how that case will progress?
Yeah, and I think, remember about tariffs, right? These are things that are paid by us as consumers, they're paid by Oregon businesses, and we're really starting to see those impacts. So we as a state, even though we had favorable rulings in the lower courts, we as the state of Oregon argued that we wanted an expedited review. The federal government also wanted an expedited review because this is impacting one of their signature agenda items. And so the Supreme Court granted review of this case. And so Oregon will be in the Supreme Court. It's more than a decade than we've been in the Supreme Court, and we'll be arguing this case on behalf of Oregon and, frankly, the entire country the first week of November. So pretty exciting stuff.
Does presenting a case before the Supreme Court differ from other courts that you have argued the case in before, and how are you preparing for something that big?
Well, this was a very unique case. We started off with a 3-judge panel. In fact, 2 of them had been appointed by Republican presidents. We were successful unanimously there, and then we went up to a panel of 11 judges. So if you're tracking that number, it's 3, 11, and then we'll be back to 9 justices as we walk into the Supreme Court. Obviously, different justices see things vastly differently. The arguments will remain the same as they've traveled through the courts. There's a tremendous amount of preparation and partnership with the other states as we move forward. But you have amazing people at the Oregon Department of Justice that have argued this case impeccably throughout the entire time, and we've been very successful so far. So I am optimistic as we wind our way through the courts.
Now, the Trump administration says the tariffs make the country strong, financially viable, and revive American manufacturing. It also says it needs to refund import taxes already collected. If they do, it could harm the Treasury. What's your response to that?
That is absurd. Those are accusations that aren't founded in traditional economics. In fact, if you go to traditional Republicans, Reagan was a big supporter of a free market economy. And you have a very strange dynamic where the president is implementing tariffs by abusing an emergency power. And remember, no other president had ever tried to do this under an emergency power. First time. There are normal statutes that protect our consumers, protect our businesses, protect our states that you normally would follow. Folks like Goldman Sachs, you'll have JP Morgan show that 60 to 80% of the tariffs are paid by us as consumers and us as businesses in America. These are not paid by foreign companies, and they're a tax on all of us. And the odd thing is, normally as politicians, when you pass taxes, you do it in the public, you do it with votes. And this is just a president who's in a room by himself passing these tariffs, exorbitant tariffs that we're all paying for right now.
As you well know, 3 of the justices were appointed by President Trump, and the court has ruled in favor of the administration in several cases already this year. How confident are you in your case?
The reason why we're confident in moving this case forward is while this is about tariffs, and that is incredibly important to all of us who are now paying for those costs, what this is also about is foundational principles about our democracy. And these are principles that it doesn't matter whether you're a conservative jurist or you're the most progressive jurist in the land. These are principles that hold true for all of us. They hold true for us when we went through grade school. Separation of powers, co-equal branches of government. The president is trying to grasp a power that has been solely delegated to Congress. So the power to tariff was given to Congress entirely by the Constitution of the United States, and they've granted some authority to the president, and he's just abusing that power and trying to do it in a way that no other president had. Those are foundational issues, and I don't think it matters what your political ideology is when you're reviewing this.
Before you go out, one final question. I want to turn to the breaking news we've been covering this evening, the death of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk after he was shot in Utah today. Your reaction to today's events?
When I learned about it, it was shocking. It is painful. It is wild that these things can go on in our democracy. This appears to be an act of political terrorism. and that cannot exist in our democracy. It can't become the norm in our society, and it doesn't matter who you are. We have to respect people's opinions, even though we disagree with them, and violence is never an answer to any form of disagreement. Now, obviously, the facts are still coming out, and I haven't gotten any updates on it, but I was incredibly bothered today.
Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Good to see you, Steve.
You too.